The galaxy remembered their name in whispers, the Vrake Dominion, harvesters of civilizations, collectors of obedience, the empire that turned star systems into cautionary tales. No enemy had ever survived them. Not a single species had resisted their march of manufactured perfection. Their fleets drifted like steel specters across the void, their soldiers bred without fear, their weapons refined over millennia of conquest, but on the distant edge of a dim spiral arm, a faint ripple reached their sensors. A distress beacon they did not expect. A call for help from a small outpost on a dust-choked world orbiting a dying red star. It was the kind of forgotten frontier post no sane species would defend. Yet someone had. When the Vrake arrived, the outpost was cratered, burned, its shields melted into molten pools of glass. The ground itself trembled, scorched by weapon signatures unknown to their vast databases. The air carried the scent of ozone and ionized metal, as if the planet had been struck by lightning again and again. At first, the Dominion dismissed it as a failed rebellion. Another primitive species refusing to understand their place beneath the Dominion's boot. But when their soldiers descended into the ruins, they found something that defied their understanding. Not bodies. Not defeated troops. But footprints, deep, heavy, purposeful, leading away from the destruction. Not retreating. Advancing. This world had not been conquered. It had been taken back. The Vrake scanned deeper until the truth emerged like a phantom rising through smoke. An unfamiliar signature burned across the battlefield, triangular scorch marks, rapid pulse coil patterns, and the unmistakable residue of human magnetolances. A weapon that punched through armored vehicles as if they were made of air. A weapon only one species carried with such reckless pride, humans. The Dominion had heard the stories. Deathworlders who tamed poison atmospheres. Engineers who built starships out of scrap and willpower. Soldiers who fought like they were angry at the universe for even daring to oppose them. But the Dominion had never taken them seriously. They were out on the fringe, scattered, chaotic, unevolved in the eyes of the Empire. Hardly worth a note in their great ledger of inevitable conquest, yet here, on this forgotten world, something had happened that rewrote the assumptions of an empire. A single human ship had come, the recordings were grainy, barely intact, but what remained was enough to bend the spine of any strategist. A silhouette cut from raw aggression. Sharp. Predatory. Alive in a way no machine should be. It descended from low orbit in a roar of fire and metal, a blade of wrath slicing through the sky. Its hull glowed with atmospheric burn, reflecting the red star behind it like a rising god. The Vrake troops stationed at the outpost had not even turned their weapons before the ship unleashed a pulse that shattered their armored vehicles into molten fragments. Its landing shook the ground like the heartbeat of some colossal beast. From the ship emerged its crew, few in number, but carved from defiance. They moved through Dominion fire like they had memorized the path of each bullet. Their weapons spat incandescent fury. Their armor displayed no symbols, no rank, only a single phrase etched like a dare on each chest plate: wrong world to step on. They fought not like soldiers, but like survivors with something far worse than anger driving them. Determination. Memory. A promise they had sworn somewhere far from this battlefield. By the time the Dominion's reinforcements reached the surface, the humans were gone. The outpost had been reclaimed, the prisoners freed, the Dominion supply caches incinerated, and the war machine still smoking. One human ship, against the undefeated. The Dominion should have dismissed it as an anomaly, an error, a statistical outlier in the grand tapestry of empire. But deep inside the wreckage, buried beneath scorched steel and shattered stone, they recovered one last fragment, an audio message encoded into the ruins themselves as if intentionally left behind. A message not for the survivors, but for whoever dared to return. A message spoken in a tone calm enough to terrify a civilization built on fear. It said only this: if you come back, bring more ships. As the Dominion warfleet assembled in orbit, studying the battlefield below, unease began to ripple through their ranks. No enemy had ever made them hesitate. But the silence of the void felt different now. charged with possibility, like a predator exhaling before it pounced. For the first time in their long, merciless history, the undefeated felt something alien, a pressure behind the lungs, a weight behind the eyes, a thought that chilled them in a way no weapon ever had. They had survived everything, but they had never survived humans. And as their sensors detected a faint distortion on the far edge of the system, like a ripple of heat in cold space, the Dominion finally understood that human ship hadn't left, it had circled back, it was waiting. The war they thought they were ready for was already staring at them. The Dominion fleet drifted in perfect formation, an iron crescent eclipsing the dying Red Star. Warships the size of cities bristled with weapons capable of reshaping planets. Their admirals stood in silence, studying the expanding distortion at the edge of the system. It pulsed like a heartbeat, once, twice, growing sharper each time, as if something massive was forcing its way through reality itself. The Vrake calculated mass signatures, they recalibrated their gravitic scanners, they ran simulations through predictive engines older than some civilizations. Every one of them failed, every one returned the same improbable result. Human technology shouldn't have been able to do this. Human ships were powerful, but crude, aggressive, but limited, brilliant, but bound by physics like everyone else. This ignored physics, bent it, demanded something larger from the universe and received it. The distortion tore open with a soundless flash, like a blade slicing water, and space itself rippled outward. A vessel emerged, crawling out of the tear with a deliberate slowness that felt intentional. The first detail the Dominion noticed was the size. This was no frigate or cruiser, it dwarfed them, a leviathan of black alloy, armored like the hide of a primordial beast carved from dead stars. The second detail was the silence. No hailing signal, no identification, not even an energy spike to indicate weapons warming, just presence, heavy, unapologetic, predatory. Panels along its hull flickered with shifting red light, like the glow of ancient embers beneath volcanic stone. The shape was asymmetrical, wrong in ways that made Dominion engineers uneasy, sharp angles where there should be curves, curves where logic demanded reinforcement. It was designed not by committees or councils. It was built by a species that had survived everything a universe could throw at them and decided survival wasn't good enough. For several long minutes, the Dominion fleet simply watched it hover there, a black monolith against the stars, too massive to ignore, too silent to predict. Observers whispered among themselves, their unease bleeding into the command channels. What is its designation? What class of vessel is that? How does a Deathworlder ship distort gravity like that? How did they hide this from us? But no answer came. The humans had not come to explain. As the Dominion's primary dreadnought began broadcasting demands for identification, protocol, procedure. Warnings, the human ship responded with motion instead of words. A single shift, a subtle reorientation of its hull plating, like a predator coiling in preparation to strike. Energy readings surged, plasma fields rippled across its spine, the void trembled around it. Every Dominion captain felt it at the same time. Instinct, an ancient one their species thought they had evolved past, the instinct reserved for when something older, stronger, and vastly more dangerous steps out of the dark. Fear. Then the human ship's forward plates separated. Unfurling like armored petals, a weapon was revealed, not a cannon, not a missile bay, something far older in design and far more terrifying in application. A gravitational harpoon, a weapon designed to grab space itself, to lock a target in place, to drag it into the kill zone whether it wanted to be there or not. The Dominion fleet scrambled, engines roared, shields flared, thousands of ships lurched into panic-driven maneuvers. But space had already chosen sides. The harpoon fired, a beam of distorted starlight, silent and impossible, and the Dominion's front line froze. Not metaphorically, literally, caught in a web of bent gravity, held like insects trapped in glass. The dreadnought's alarm screamed, its captain demanded countermeasures, overrides, quantum shunts, anything, but the weapons consoles flashed the same message again and again. Target priority overridden. Stability compromised. The Dominion had never seen a weapon breach systems without firing a single shot. This one reached into their ships and rewrote reality around them. The human vessel advanced, slow, purposeful, like a giant leaning over a trembling animal. The Vrake Dominion had conquered thousands of worlds, subjugated millions. They were the definition of power in the galaxy. But as that monstrous human ship drifted closer, casting their fleet in its shadow, they finally understood something their arrogance had never allowed them to consider. The humans had held back. Before, they were just now revealing what they were truly capable of. And this time, they hadn't come to reclaim a forgotten outpost. The Dominion fleet had always believed themselves to be the apex of interstellar might, an empire sharpened by countless conquests, guided by a cold and clinical understanding of war. Their ships were masterpieces of precision engineering, their tactics the product of centuries of refinement, and their fleets the terror of entire galactic sectors. Yet, as the human Leviathan drifted forward, silent and inexorable, something began to crumble inside every Dominion officer who watched, not their ships, not their weapons, but their certainty that they understood the humans. Certainty that humanity was dangerous. Yes, but predictable. Certainty that every species in the galaxy had limits. The monstrous human vessel kept advancing, its hull shifting with fluid mechanical movements that made no logical sense. Its armor flexed like muscle. Its plating adjusted like bone. The ship breathed, slowly, deeply, venting pale blue vapor that curled through the void like chilled smoke. At first, Dominion scanners flagged the vapor as a coolant leak, then as a chemical discharge, then as biological matter. Each reading overran the last until the system simply shut down, overwhelmed by contradictions. What kind of ship confused computers by merely existing? Inside the Dominion flagship, the bridge fell into a thick, buzzing quiet. Officers adjusted their displays, but every sensor, every chart, every model returned only one chilling classification: unknown predator class signature, EST threat level, unsurvivable, recommended response, flight. But there was nowhere to fly. The gravitational harpoon still held the Dominion vessels in an unbreakable grip. The trapped ship strained, engines screaming, hulls groaning under forces they were never designed to resist. Some began to fracture, hairline cracks forming in their outer plating, shedding micron-thin shrapnel into the void. Then the human ship released a sound, not a weapon discharge, not a communication, not even a warning. It was a hum. Low, resonant, deep enough to vibrate through hulls and bones alike. Dominion captains clutched their chests, their hearts raced in panic, their ships shuddered like hunted prey, and the human Leviathan responded to their fear by opening new sections along its flanks. Two massive structures unfolded outward, like wings of matte black armor. They glowed faintly, blue lines tracing impossible geometric patterns that twisted at the liminal edge of perception. Even looking at them made some Dominion officers nauseous, their vision blurring as if their eyes refused to comprehend the shape. Then a ripple swept across those wings, a soft, graceful pulse, and the Dominion fleet witnessed something they had no words for. The human ship began copying their fleet, not visually, not structurally, energetically. It matched their shield frequencies, matched their firing signatures, matched the power output of every vessel caught in its grasp, amplifying it, reflecting it, turning their own strength into something greater than they could ever produce on their own. The Dominion's chief strategist felt cold dread settle into his bones. This wasn't a warship. This was a predator that adapted in real time, a weapon designed to face anything, and make that anything irrelevant. The human vessel continued mimicking the Dominion's energy profile until, with a sudden, violent flare, it surpassed them. Every Dominion screen flashed red, power inversion detected, human signature exceeding maximum tolerance, unauthorized systems access, lockout failure, weapons overridden, weapons arrays shut down, shield matrices collapsed, engines fell silent one by one, as if the ships themselves were submitting to something greater than them. Inside the Dominion flagship, officers whispered in disbelief. They're rewriting our systems. They're using our own technology better than we can. This shouldn't be possible. But it was. The human ship expanded its reach, its influence spreading like a cold sunrise across the entire crescent of trapped enemy vessels. And then, without warning, the harpoon disengaged, not to let the Dominion escape, but to let them witness. The wings glowed white-hot, energy surged into the void, the human Leviathan inhaled the Dominion fleet's power, every watt of it, and redirected it into one single, unified point at its prow. A sphere of compressed starlight formed, bright, dense, beautiful in a way that terrified every living creature watching. The Dominion had seen planet killers, star igniters, fleet breakers, but they had never, not once, not in their entire history, seen a weapon that used the enemy's own power to forge something so quiet, so perfect, so utterly merciless. The sphere pulsed, it needed no words. No threat, no declaration of intent, it simply existed, and by existing, it promised death. In that moment, the Dominion understood something that froze them to their core. The Dominion fleet had never experienced silence like this. Not the kind of communication that carried intention or warning, not the empty void between stellar systems. They had endured those countless times. This was different. This was silence weighted with inevitability, a void that pressed on metal and mind alike, shaping thought into the only rational response, fear. Ships that once radiated power and precision now floated like fragile toys, hulls scarred, systems screaming under stress. Officers whispered frantic assessments, running calculations that returned impossible probabilities. Every sensor reading seemed a lie. Every weapons status report contradicted the last. The universe itself had been rewritten around the human's presence. The human Leviathan advanced slowly, deliberately, its hull glowing with subtle blue currents of energy that pulsed in rhythm like a heartbeat. The gravitational harpoon had been replaced by something more terrifying, an unseen manipulation of forces that bent the Dominion's own ships into subservience. Engines groaned, shields trembled, and power conduits overloaded, not from attack, but from alignment. The humans were rearranging the battlefield itself, and then the human ship began to move among them. Not in a direct assault, not with speed or recklessness, but with the precision of a predator that knows every path, every weakness, every hesitation of its prey. Dominion dreadnoughts shifted helplessly, powerless to resist as the Leviathan mirrored their positions, matched their momentum, and anticipated every countermeasure. The admirals felt it in their bones. These humans were not constrained by fear, by strategy, by protocol. They fought like the universe itself had whispered secrets to them, secrets of momentum, energy, and instinct. They moved with a comprehension of physics the Dominion had only ever theorized, applied with the ruthless creativity that only survival against impossible odds could forge. One by one, the Vrake realized the pattern. The human ship wasn't just overpowering them, it was teaching them. Every defensive formation, every firing sequence, every evasive maneuver was anticipated and absorbed. The humans were taking the Dominion's own strategies, refining them, and reflecting them back with merciless efficiency. A fleet of city-sized warships that had crushed hundreds of civilizations now found itself outmaneuvered by a single vessel. Its crew, dozens at most, acted in perfect synchrony, a living network of intent and instinct. Dominion officers began to panic. Commands overlapped, contradicted, and failed to propagate in time. Sensors overheated trying to calculate the human maneuvers. Shields fluctuated, failing not from attack but from the sheer impossibility of what they faced. Then the human Leviathan struck, not with a blast, not with missiles, not with fire, with silence. A ripple of force passed through space, subtle yet unyielding. The Dominion fleet tilted, staggered, and then collapsed inward as if some invisible hand had drawn lines through the void and snapped them taut. Entire wings of vessels collided, shields failing catastrophically, weapon systems frying under forces they could not counter. The sound of metal grinding and energy overloads filled the Dominion fleet sensor networks like a symphony of inevitability. The human ship hovered at the center of the chaos. Untouched, serene, as if observing a tableau it had orchestrated with casual precision. Its hull reflected the destruction around it without sustaining a scratch, glowing faintly with the heat of compressed energy that no Dominion sensor could fully measure. And then the humans fired, not in salvo, not in barrage, but in judgment. Streams of energy leapt from the Leviathan's hull, targeting key systems across the Dominion line. Shields collapsed before they could react. Engines tore themselves apart in uncontrolled surges. Command bridges disintegrated under precise strikes that avoided unnecessary destruction of hull integrity, a brutal efficiency that spoke of calculated mercy, or perhaps confidence. Within moments, entire formations were immobilized, flung into disarray, their fleet's legendary cohesion shattered. The remaining ships attempted retreat, but even movement was impossible. The humans had claimed the battlefield without chasing shadows, and in the midst of the chaos, the human ship's crew emerged on external observation nodes, their forms silhouetted against the dying glow of the stars. Not many, but every movement precise, intentional. Every stance unflinching. They were humanity distilled into motion and purpose. A single wordless transmission flooded Dominion channels, understood instinctively rather than linguistically: leave or face extinction. For the first time in history, the Vrake Dominion understood something they had never anticipated. Humans do not negotiate from fear, they commanded, and somewhere deep within the immensity of the Leviathan's hull, systems hummed, energy surged, and the universe seemed to bend slightly, accommodating a species that refused limits. By the time the first surviving Dominion ships withdrew into distant space, the message was clear. Humanity had arrived, not to parley, not to retreat, not to entertain. They had arrived to define the terms of survival itself, and in that quiet, devastating truth, every Dominion officer knew something their empire had never taught them: the galaxy would never forget this day. The Dominion fleet limped through the void, crippled, humiliated, and yet alive. Ships that had once represented the pinnacle of galactic supremacy now floated like broken toys, patched together with sheer will and malfunctioning systems. Commanders muttered in disbelief, each one struggling to reconcile centuries of doctrine with the reality they had just faced. Humanity had not simply defeated them, they had rewritten the rules of engagement, the laws of physics, and the definition of power itself. Meanwhile, the human Leviathan followed at a deliberate distance, silent, unthreatening, yet radiating an unmistakable aura of dominance. The harpoon had vanished, the energy beams retracted. Yet the Dominion knew, without question, that the humans could strike at any time, in any manner, and the outcome would be identical. Every movement of the Leviathan was a reminder that humanity had embraced an understanding of war the galaxy had never seen: total control, total adaptation, total moral clarity. The Dominion attempted to regroup, forming fragmented formations and attempting communication channels, but the human ship ignored all attempts at parley. It did not speak, it did not demand, it simply was. And that was enough. On board the human Leviathan, the crew moved with quiet efficiency. A single human operator adjusted a console, recalibrating the gravitational stabilizers to account for the residual energy ripples left by the Dominion fleet. Another monitored energy patterns, noting weak points in alien propulsion systems. Their movements were fluid, synchronized, almost choreographed, as if each knew instinctively what the other would do before it happened. The Dominion, observing from a distance, realized something terrifying. The humans did not merely react, they anticipated. Every maneuver, every defensive tactic they had ever deployed, the humans had already considered, prepared for, and had a counter ready. It was not strategy, it was inevitability. In a desperate, final attempt to reclaim pride, the Dominion sent a single battlecruiser forward, its massive engines flaring as it tried to challenge the human ship directly. Its weapons powered up, a chorus of energy resonances promising destruction. But before a single shot could be fired, the human Leviathan shifted its orientation, and the battlecruiser's systems locked in place. Engines died. Weapons froze. Hull integrity indicators blinked red in a steady, haunting rhythm. The humans had reached into their enemy's systems without firing a shot, without warning, and had imposed their will effortlessly. The Dominion crew felt a sensation foreign to them all: helplessness. Total, suffocating helplessness. Then, the Leviathan released a pulse, a subtle but undeniable display of power. It did not explode, it did not tear ships apart. Instead, it sent a wave through space that corrected the trajectories of the Dominion vessels, guiding them back toward safe regions of space. A gesture of mercy, calculated yet absolute, delivered without words. Humanity had not killed them, not yet, but it had demonstrated that their capacity for destruction was unmatched and perfectly precise. Across the Dominion fleet, officers could not speak, could not issue commands. All they could do was watch. And as they watched, a new truth settled into their bones: the galaxy would never be the same. Humans had arrived as the impossible force, the anomaly that no calculation, no fleet, no empire could predict or defeat, and behind the Leviathan, moving like a shadow across the starlight, smaller human ships began to appear, emerging from hidden points. Flanking, supporting, and reinforcing. The Dominion realized with a chill that this display was not a singular event. Humanity had the capacity to bring fleets, to orchestrate movements across vast distances, and to impose control on a scale the galaxy had never imagined. Even as the Dominion fled, retreating into the depths of space with fear etched into every ship's hull, one thought burned in every mind: they had underestimated humans before, and it had nearly cost them everything. The Dominion fleet was gone, or what remained of it. Scattered fragments drifted silently through space, smoke trails of failing propulsion and shattered shields marking their retreat. Entire squadrons had been rendered inoperable. Engines dead, weapons systems fried, hulls scarred beyond repair. The remnants of the once mighty empire now bore the unmistakable signature of a species that had come to redefine the rules of survival itself. The human Leviathan hovered at the edge of the field, surveying the aftermath. Its hull pulsed with subtle light, a heartbeat visible across kilometers of void, an unspoken warning to any who might follow. Smaller human vessels flanked it, arriving silently from hidden coordinates, forming a constellation of power that was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. Every ship moved in harmony, responding to the Leviathan as though it were the central nervous system of a living organism. Humanity had demonstrated that war was not just fought, it could be choreographed, anticipated, and concluded with precision that bordered on the divine. Inside the Leviathan, humans worked with quiet efficiency. Their movements were fluid, purposeful, each action a reflection of intelligence tempered by instinct. Engineers monitored energy flows, pilots ran calculations in real time, tacticians assessed residual threats, yet there was no fear, no panic, no hesitation. They had faced the impossible, and the impossible had yielded. A lone Dominion signal flared in the void, a fragmented communication begging for truce, for mercy, for understanding. The Leviathan systems intercepted it, analyzed it, and ignored it. The message was unnecessary, the lesson had been delivered. Humanity's presence alone had rewritten the galaxy's ledger of power. Beyond the immediate battlefield, the stars continued their silent march. Planets spun on their axes, moons traced their orbits, and light traveled across the void in ancient, unwavering lines. But somewhere in the infinite darkness, a new truth had been etched into the memory of every intelligent being capable of observation. Humanity had arrived, not as supplicants or conquerors, but as a force that defied expectation, challenged certainty, and demanded recognition. The Leviathan turned, engines igniting softly, bending gravity and energy around its hull as it moved. It did not pursue, did not gloat, did not strike again. It simply departed, leaving the Dominion and the galaxy alike to reckon with what had been witnessed. Every sensor reading, every tactical report, every calculated assumption now bore the weight of one undeniable fact: humanity would not be contained, could not be predicted, and would not be ignored. And in that quiet, triumphant exhalation of power and restraint, the universe itself seemed to pause.